So I went to Redwood High School, which is in this watershed, in the Corte Madera Creek watershed. My family's been in this watershed since 1896, and we lived upstream under the base of Mount Tam. In 1896, we started in tent cabins. And so my family got very familiar with the flora and the fauna of this watershed and the biological diversity. So those of you who haven't maybe, I don't know, how many of you were born and raised in this region? Okay, so that's a decent amount. You live in one of the top 25 most biologically diverse places on our planet. And you wouldn't think about that with the ecology you see around you because it's a temperate climate, it dries out in the summer. We have these 6-month dry periods. What kind of diversity could we have here? But we actually have these amazing conifer forests combined with deciduous, combined with oak woodlands, and all of the fauna that can exist within this beautifully biologically diverse ecosystem inspired me as a child. And watching the ebb and flow of the tidal, the brackish water in the Corte Madera Creek, and how the fresh water coming off Mount Tam blended with that salt water, and all the life that that created, inspired actually my natural dye practice. So at age 19, I went to UC Davis, and I was asked to teach children younger than myself. I was still a child. But I was asked to teach children during my summer job how to use synthetic dyes to make tie-dye t-shirts. And so as we were dipping all of these materials into these buckets, I had to have the children wear masks, gloves, and aprons to use dye that then they put on t-shirts that then they put on their body. And then we took that dye and we put it down the drain. And so just fast forward, I'm going to briefly tangentialize for a moment. We had a wool symposium last week, and a molecular biologist from UC Davis is taking municipal biosolid sludge samples from San Francisco and all the major cities. She found one of the preeminent chemical compounds that's biopersistent in our sludge, which is our laundry, wastewater, all the water coming out of our homes, plus our black water, our human manure, has dye intermediaries. Those dye intermediaries are estrogenic compounds that can bind to our cells' ability, well, our communicator system is the hormones that communicate between cells. So these estrogenic compounds are showing up in the biosludge that ends up back on our farmland. So as a young woman, I didn't know that molecular biological reality, and it's just gonna hit in the next 3 years. Her PhD, the woman who presented this work, her PhD will be out in a year. So you'll end up hearing more about how these biopersistent compounds in our textiles are circulating through our whole biosphere and getting into our system in ways that isn't just like, oh, I'm wearing a toxic thing on my skin. It's how does this thing that got this color, how does it persist in the whole hydrologic and carbon cycle that we live within? So back to being 19 and intuitively recognizing that there's something off about these colors, I then came to realize that all the color you're wearing, do you know where it comes from? Anyone have an idea where the red or the gray or the blue comes from? It's derived from coal tar. So the same types of materials that we want to keep in the ground and the same types of materials that fuel our energy system are the same materials that are clothing us and creating color. So if you're wearing nylon, acrylic, polyester, our favorite athletic wear for yoga, running, it's all from coal tar. So as we begin to understand how we want to live in the carbon cycle, all these clothing item choices change. So fast forward a little bit farther, I was watching troops go into Afghanistan in 2009, and I got really tired of war. I was just exhausted. I was like, this is just, when are we going to stop bonking other countries on the head for resources that we want? Well, how do we do that? We actually need to create the resources we need in our home communities. The colonial attitude, the imperial attitude comes from taking what we want in a way that is unfriendly, to say the least, and multi-generational traumatizing at its worst. So I started to look at my own clothing, and at Davis, I did learn how to weave. I did practice the art of natural dyes. I finally took those children that I worked with through a whole process of learning to use natural dyes in the process I taught myself. So I'm a knitter, I'm a weaver, I'm a natural dyer. And I looked down at my own clothing, I said, how can I be part of a solution to this abstract thing of war that's in another soil in another country? And so what I did was I told myself I'd use myself as a guinea pig. And I would dress myself, my underwear, my socks, my shirt, my pants, everything was gonna come from natural fibers that were farmed, ranched. The color would come from plants grown or weedy species. And I would wear a wardrobe grown and made from within a fiber shed. Like a watershed or like a food shed, I would take complete material responsibility for my clothing. And so I constructed a wardrobe, but what I didn't realize was it's very hard to make all your own underwear and socks. And so I engaged a group of we have this beautiful, the Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco community is riddled with these amazing young people who are graduating from FIT and CCA and all these design schools. So I engaged some of my friends teaching sustainability at the design schools, and I brought their students, master's degree students, undergrad students, and I said, let's work together on a project where we could help create a prototype wardrobe from this fiber shed, which was 150 miles from my front door, north, east, and south. I didn't get anything in the Pacific Ocean, so nothing west. And the students and I worked with farmers in 27 counties, and we made this gorgeous wardrobe. And what I realized when I started road mapping the raw materials that are grown in our home community, there's 3.1 million pounds of wool grown in California every year. We're the largest wool producer in the country. 200 million pounds of cotton is grown in California every year. How many of you are growing or know that we are the second largest cotton producer, first largest wool producer in the country? How many of you are wearing California wool or California cotton? One person? Two people? So the reality is we have this ability to actually wear local. We actually have the physical reality of our soils, our rainfall patterns. We do not need to rely on coal tar-based microplastics, which are now in 94% of America's drinking water. The lint coming off our plastic clothes is getting into our bodies. That's the latest stat. The micro-lint is choking plankton in our oceans. But the solution is under our feet. And we can grow these materials. We don't need to grow GMO cotton. We don't need to rely on synthetic biology or genetic engineering. We can actually, through building our soils, healthy soils, we can produce healthy fibers and natural dyes. We can wear these materials, and the beautiful part is at the end of their life, everything I'm wearing can go back to the soil. It can be composted in my backyard. So we call this the soil-to-soil framework. That 1 year living in clothing in my fiber shed has forever changed my neurology. I think about resources differently. When I think about we always need a tech fix or we need something outside of ourselves to solve a problem, start with your home community. Start with what's under your feet. Start with your family, your friends, local schools, local government. The solutions are really most often right there. And those are the places you can affect change in the most profound way. So at the end of the day, we now have North Face working with us. A climate beneficial beanie came out just 4 weeks ago, but we have a host of small designers that aren't part of the largest textile corporation in the world also starting to work with these materials. We're connecting designers to farms. So how many of you are interested in design at all and the textile industry at all? How many of you are interested in agriculture? So all of you interested in agriculture are those who are going to be involved in systems that have the potential to grow what we wear. So when you think, another thing I want to leave you with is just open one's mind to the reality that the way we got into these situations is by being very myopic about solutions. So when we think about ourselves as interested in the food system, just remind ourselves that the food and fiber system are really one and the same. The same land that feeds you is the land that clothes you. The farmers that are growing your food are the same farmers on the same land growing your fiber. So one of my favorite pieces, this is a wheat farmer. And she is a biodynamic organic wheat farmer named Sally Fox, and she rotates sheep through her wheat and through her cotton. So she's making material that we can eat as bread, wool that we can wear as scarves, and cotton that we can wear as jeans, all on 165 acres. So think about integrated livestock systems, thinking about agriculture as this whole beautiful place where we can sink carbon from our atmosphere while producing the dyes and fibers that we need to live healthy, safe, and beautiful lives. Thank you.